the sky's the limit for him. And then you talk about, all the coaches he's been around, all the offensive minds and things of that nature. So I feel like, definitely, if you had to take him over Burrow, over Herbert, I'd take him right now, without a doubt.
Okay, so you got Hurts over Burrow and Herbert.
Right now, today, correct, yes.
You got to do some scouting now, Coach. So when you come back in February, we know where to go. And our good friend, Glenn Erby, hopefully has his plane ticket booked for that Arizona trip out there in February. He joins us like he does each and every Wednesday. Of course, Eagles Newswire, USA Today. He's got the Phillies hoodie on. It's playoff time there in Philadelphia. Good morning, Glenn. How we doing today?
Good morning, Rick. How you doing? Blessed to be on the show, man.
Absolutely. And I know we got some questions flowing in from the chat room. They want to get our take on the Arizona Cardinals and Philadelphia Eagles, and we'll absolutely do that. But before the commercial break, I had an interesting debate with the chat room, and I said, listen, Jalen Hurts is a top 10 quarterback. Okay. And I rattled off 8 or 9 guys that I would maybe take ahead of him. And someone mentioned, like, hey, if the Super Bowl were played tomorrow, Glenn, and you had to choose Joe Burrow or Jalen Hurts, it's not as easy as one might think. I mean, who would you be taking in that dilemma?
Tomorrow, based off what we've seen so far this year, I'd take Jalen Hurts easily.
No question about it.
None. I mean, based off the running ability, the calm, his smoothness in big game situations. He's big game prepared. Spent time at Alabama, Oklahoma. Basically took the same, steps to the NFL that Burrow did. He just had better. He had a better arsenal at LSU and those things. He had a better arsenal of weapons with the Bengals. But in terms of right now, if I had to have one guy play in the Super Bowl outside of the big names like Herbert, Brady, or those guys, I'd take Hurts over Burrow easily.
Hey, I don't see why you wouldn't. And I love his analogy earlier this week in one of the interviews. He said, I always had a different mind behind the mic. And he was talking about, hey, Lane Kiffin, Brian Daboll, all these great offensive minds, Ric Serritella, Lincoln Riley, the list goes on and on. He's like, basically, I've been taught and coached the same play with multiple different coaches to do different things in different situations and different offenses. And so, we talked about the continuity with the coaching staff, the offensive system, and even Hurts accredited to, like, hey, since I played for my father back in high school, like, this is the first time I've had the same offensive system. And Sirianni kind of echoed the same thing, like, hey, you know what? We found what Hurts really likes. We discovered what he does well. And kudos to Sirianni for building an offense around Hurts rather than fitting Hurts into a specific scheme.
Correct. I mean, Sirianni, offensive coordinator Shane Steichen, the quarterbacks coach Brian Johnson, don't leave him out. They've had a relationship since Jalen was a young kid. So I think that the personnel around him, the coaching staff around him, the minds, the brains he's been able to learn from, it's just, made his growth and his level and his approach to the game that much more superior than some others. So I think it was a negative before, it was a hindrance before, but now being in the same system for the second year in a row, being around the same coaches, being able to use the same dialect, the same verbiage, the sky's the limit for him. And then you talk about, all the coaches he's been around, all the offensive minds and things of that nature. So I feel like, definitely, if you had to take him over Burrow, over Herbert, I'd take him right now, without a doubt.
Okay, so you got Hurts over Burrow and Herbert, which
right
is interesting.
Today, correct, yes.
Well, Howie Roseman's going to have to be paying them Justin Herbert and Joe Burrow type of money. I think all 3 of these guys are probably keeping a close eye on Lamar Jackson, who I think is going to reset the market.
Correct.
And then all these other guys are going to fall in line. So, we've been talking Jalen Hurts. He's on that MVP race. The Eagles are on that Super Bowl march, and we're going to get into the Cardinals matchup here in just a second. Let me get your takeaways from the Jaguars game. Of course, Dougie P came to town, punched them in the mouth early on. But to me, I thought it was a good test to see how the Eagles deal with adversity. They hadn't played from behind since week 1 against the Lions. And they showed that, hey, weather conditions, falling from behind, whatever the situation may be, no task too tall for this team to handle. Still, the only undefeated team here through 4 weeks.
Correct. And I think we talked about before the offensive line depth. So you lead with that. You can take that anywhere, even with two starters out. I think the fact that he threw the pick six and they responded as a team was a big indication of where they are and where they're heading. I think, it would have been easy for them to have lost to the Jags, looking ahead to the Cardinals, looking ahead again to the Cowboys, but they regrouped, went back to the running game, went back to the system that worked last season while still incorporating some pass to A.J. Brown, Dallas Goedert, and doing the things they did on defense. So I think it was a great win in terms of where they want to go and where they're heading.
Yeah, and, it was another different pick your poison kind of game. By the way, the Eagles offensive line that you mentioned is the second rated offensive line in run blocking. And we saw Miles Sanders have a career day. The week before, it was Jalen Hurts. We beat you 1 week with A.J. Brown. We beat you another week with Devonta Smith. Pick your poison. This week, it was the ground game and Miles Sanders. And he's another guy that's marching his way into free agency this upcoming offseason. What did you take away from Miles Sanders?
I mean, we talked before about the Eagles and specifically Ric Serritella wanting them to take the job and run with it. And I think that's what you're seeing. I mean, this 27 carries were a career high. I don't think he's done that since he was in high school. So I don't think you'll see that on a weekly basis in terms of the wear and tear, but in terms of the way he's running with the purpose, picking up the blitz and pass protection, being able to be an able body in the passing game as well. That's what you want from him. You want him to be able to reduce Boston Scott snaps and simply his 25 carries, Gainwell's 5 to 10, and go from there. So I think from the standpoint of him taking the job and running with it, earning a new contract, you're seeing all that.
Yeah, he did have 27 carries one time at Penn State. So he did hit that once in college. But yes, a career high in carries, yardage, and even Trey Sermon got into the mix a little bit. Didn't play a lot, but when he did touch the ball, he maximized the opportunities. A lot of people, the listening audience, the chat room, they're all craving for a little bit more Trey Sermon.
I mean, he's a hard runner, and I love Boston Scott. I love Gainwell. But like I said, you can continue to give Gainwell his 5 to 10 touches. Even if you reduce Boston Scott snaps, you give Sermon his 5 to 10 touches as well. 5 to 10 touches on the goal line. He's good in the screen game, the RPO game. So you have options there. And when you're running behind that line, just about anything is going to work.
Talking to Glenn Erby, Eagles Wire, USA Today here on the Football Playbook. It's a Wednesday, October 5th, 2022. You know how we do. I want to get your opinion on the Cardinals, Glenn, but first, I saw you put up an article about this kicker, Cam Dicker, that the Eagles signed. They had a couple of kickers in for tryouts yesterday. I remember Dicker coming out of Texas. He was 13 of 15 last year. I think 98% extra point percentage, 75% field goal percentage. What else can you tell us about Cam Dicker?
Well, we know if he has to play, he already has a win over Kyler Murray from his days at Oklahoma against Texas. So he's on the practice squad. It'll be a wait-and-see approach with Jake Elliott. It's a situation where because they're 4-0, you don't necessarily have to play Elliott this week. So it'll be a wait-and-see probably all the way up to Saturday. But he's a solid kicker, signed by the Rams as an undrafted free agent. Spent time with Baltimore this summer as well. So if Elliott can't go, it's a solid signing, and he should be able to maintain the balance and perspective.
Yeah, I like that little tidbit. He's already beaten Kyler Murray once. So Glenn Erby bringing the facts to the show. That's what we do here. Dalton Keene released from the practice squad. And do you anticipate, before we get into the Cardinals, any other moving and shaking on this roster? I made some waves yesterday, Glenn, by saying I think the Eagles should at least kick the tires and entertain the idea of Odell Beckham Jr. Got some pushback there on the Twitterverse, people saying, hey, there's enough Batmans, but why not make him a Robin? Why not put him back there as a punt returner or kick returner and try to catch lightning in the bottle come playoff time?
I'm fine with Odell, but I think that would have to depend on, again, his usage rate, things like that. You don't want to bring him in if you're not going to throw him the ball. And, the last couple of weeks, Hurts has only been targeting Goddard Devonta Smith and A.J. Brown. Quez Watkins is going a few weeks without a target, Pascal as well. So I can agree with some people saying, well, you don't want that third Batman in if you're not going to utilize him. So if you're going to spread the ball around and get it to him, I'm fine with that. But if you're fine with just using the running game, using Hurts as a dual threat, then just stick with what you have. You have a top 5 tight end also. So that's something that a lot of teams don't have. So he accounts for what Odell might want to do anyway.
All right, fair enough. Well, we talked about Jalen Hurts. He continues to slay all the opposing quarterbacks. He tops the $40 million man in Kirk Cousins. He defeats his predecessor, Carson Wentz. And then this week, all eyes on Kyler Murray, who you alluded to. Oh, by the way, making $46 million per year. I mean, another big victory over this type of caliber of quarterback is going to continue to state the case for this Jalen Hurts payday, correct?
Correct. I mean, every win counts. Every big win counts. Every strong performance counts. I mean, I know we talk about Lamar Jackson resetting the market, but if he continues to have his back and forth discussions with the Ravens, if he continues to want all of his money guaranteed, it could be Hurts resetting the market. So I think it depends on what the Eagles want to do, how they want to do it, and how quick they want to do it. He actually has his final year of his rookie deal to play on. So the Eagles could play that out and continue to add weapons around him, or if they want to get it over with at the end of this summer, they could give him a new deal, reset it. But the better he plays, the more over 35 million it goes, and the closer it gets to 40, 41 million in that range.
Interesting take. Glenn Erby, Jalen Hurts could maybe reset the market. All right, let's dig a little bit deeper into this Cardinals matchup. We said every week it's pick your poison, run, pass. Another NFC defensive player of the week. What are the keys to victory for the Philadelphia Eagles against this Cardinals team?
I think just keeping it consistent in terms of the way you deal with Kyler Murray. I think you'll see Gannon approach this a little more passively. I think you do want to rush with 4, but just 4. I think you want to take away his running lanes, allow Haason Reddick to do what he does. So I think from that standpoint, you pay more attention to A.J. Green, pay more attention to Zach Ertz, go from there, try to stifle a running game on offense and play it out.
Yeah, Murray and Hurts are similar in this way, where I feel like they're actually more dangerous outside the pocket than inside the pocket, right? Correct. And so, like, if you rush Kyler, and it's been about a 33% blitz rate the last couple games. The problem is when you get Kyler improvising and running around, that seems to be where he's at his best. I go back to that 2-point conversion or whatever. He ran around for like 26 seconds on one play just to gain 2 yards. That's the kind of scrambling, improvising ability that Kyler Murray brings to the table. So I think you're right. I think you stick with the 4-man rush. With that being said, the Cardinals are a more balanced team than people realize. They run the ball more than you would think that a Cliff Kingsbury team does run the ball. I know James Conner was a little bit banged up. I don't know what his status is as of late, but what do you think the balance will be with the Cardinals in terms of attacking the Eagles defense?
I mean, I think it'll be a wait and see approach. I think from the Eagles' perspective, it'll be about whether or not they have Avonte Maddox and Darius Slay available. Both could potentially play, but again, as we talked about, with the team being 4-0, you may decide to sit those 2 and hold them out for Dallas. But I think in terms of the Cardinals' offensive balance, they do like to run the ball, but I think over the last 2 or 3 weeks, they've fallen behind. So it becomes a situation where it becomes that aerial show that Kingsbury's used to. I think Kyler Murray's on pace to shatter the record for passes thrown in the season. So I think from that standpoint, you'll definitely see him drop back and throw the ball 40 to 50 times against the Eagles. So from a pressure standpoint and the ability to cause havoc and get turnovers, you like that. So I think as long as the Eagles can continue to be efficient offensively, continue to score points in the second quarter, you'll put Arizona in a situation where all they can do is pass.
Good points. And it's a good week, though, to catch the Cardinals because they still don't have DeAndre Hopkins, right? Correct. So if Slay is out, that kind of offsets that loss. Now, Maddox, he's a significant piece to be missing because Josiah Scott had his ups, he had his downs. What kind of scenario is the Eagles' secondary looking like if Slay and Maddox do miss this upcoming game. Is it more of Josiah Scott in the slot, or could we see Chauncey Gardner-Johnson reside back to his old role? How does this secondary match up against the Cardinals' passing attack? Rondell Moore, I think, is coming back, so the Cardinals will have one weapon back.
Correct. Moore's back. I think it'll be on Gannon to look at the film and see what he wants to do. I know you talked about Josiah Moore, and he had his ups and downs in that ball game, but he was also the lowest rated defender in the game as well, too. So you take those numbers for what they are. But like you said, you can move C.J. Gardner-Johnson up if you want, play Kayvon Wallace more, or just simply play it the way he played it last week, play more zone, make Murray dink and dunk, and wait for him to make a mistake or, cause a turnover. So I think you'll see Gannon back off some, allow his pass rush to do what they do, and make the Cardinals beat them through the air.
Yeah, it almost seems like if you let Murray sit in the pocket and have the time, that's when he's more prone to have a costly turnover or interception.
He'll get bored. He'll literally get bored. I think if you make him sit back there 40 to 50 times a game, it's essentially, what we talk about in terms of his reputation and things like that, wanting the big play, wanting to be explosive. He'll get bored, and he'll put the ball up for grabs.
Yeah, and that's the difference between Murray and Hurts. To me, they can both be dual threat quarterbacks, but Hurts is looking to pass first.
Correct.
Now, he runs a lot because he has to, but Murray, I feel like, almost is looking for a reason to scramble around and be on the move. And so I will say, Josiah Scott, what do we got going on there? Little background ambiance. I will say Josiah Scott had his up and downs, but Zach McPherson played very well after Slay went down. McPherson stepped his game up and played almost the entire game flawless.
He did. I think it'll be a situation where that's why they drafted him. They drafted him to eventually replace Slay, and I think you'll see where he'll play. He'll probably play less man, more zone, and go from there.
All right, Glenn Erby here, Eagles Newswire USA Today, checking in with us like he does each and every Wednesday. We talked offense, we talked defense. Let's talk a little bit about those special teams. Britton Covey, the human crash test dummy, he takes some big hits there now. He had a muffed punt, but Michael Clay, the special teams coach, said, hey, the players thrive off of this kid. He's so tough. He's like the Ric Serritella mantra, story of the underdog. They see him get rocked and spring back up, and it just motivates the whole team. Where do you rank the special teams unit so far? We'll take Jake Elliott out of the equation since he's questionable, but are you happy with the return game? Do you feel like Covey's the guy long-term, or you still playing a wait-and-see approach?
I think at this point, he can be the guy. I think at this point, you're happy that he's not turning the ball over and he's not causing negative yardage, and I think that's what you want. I think at this point, you don't really have the expectation that he's going to be a dynamic playmaker in the return game, but he is fielding the ball. He was put on kick returns as well, so I think that they're happy with what he's doing. I think Aaron Sippis can improve as a punter, and I think if he continues to go on this route, you'll likely see a move made there, but I think it's an improving unit. I think it's a solid unit, but based off of what the offense and defense is doing, that's the one unit you can kind of harp on and have a complaint about.
All right, time for the prediction. It is Wednesday, so you've reserved the right to change your opinion by the end of the week, Glenn, and I know you got a lot of great content flowing on the Eagles Newswire. We'll get to that in a second. Give us the final outcome with the score prediction if you can.
I've picked the Eagles to win 4 weeks in a row now. This one will be a bit more difficult because I see them looking ahead to Dallas with Slay and Maddox maybe not playing, with Mailata maybe not playing. We'll wait and see depending on what his MRI says. I see the Cardinals at home 28-27 in a thriller.
Woo! Okay. All right, you're the first one to pick the Cards on the record. And he's got the Philly red, maybe a precursor to the Cardinals sea of red, but we'll come back and talk about it. We'll see if the Eagles are still the last undefeated team to be standing in the National Football League. Glenn, tell everybody in the listening audience at home where to find all your work and the latest and greatest that you have coming out.
You find all my Eagles work at the Eagles Wire at usatoday.com. You'll find me on Twitter at the cover2nfl.com. And we're just out here. We'll be covering the Eagles, Cardinals, Jalen Hurts MVP candidacy, 3 straight Defensive Player of the Week honors, and more coming up this week.
All right. Hey, we always appreciate the time, Glenn. Stay dry out there. It's been raining since Friday here at the Jersey Shore. Hopefully a little bit better by you, but buckle up. It's going to be a double chin strap affair this Sunday.
Appreciate you, Rick.
All right.